Hello, my name is Michaela O'Connor Abrams, founder of Mocha Plus. Welcome to our Collective Conscience series. We created this series for you to bring together great minds from around the world on myriad topics that we hope will expand your mind, will challenge your current beliefs, and give you an opportunity to be inspired with every video. Enjoy. Our differences, be they race, religion, gender, political, or geographic, must be seen as a diverse fabric needed to move forward. If you have joined us this evening, then you want to be a part of the conversation that brings about change for Black people and all people of color in this country. My friend and colleague Stevie Lee is someone with whom I have worked, played, laughed, and cried. His roles in our community are many, and he grew up through these roles as a native of Marin City. I am so honored, and Shelley and I were thrilled when he agreed to be our guest to begin a series of these conversations on collective conscience. Originally, we were going to say until the end of 2020, but I think you would all agree that we continue until we have demonstrable change. So I hope I am still old enough that I'm going to be able to lead this. If it depends on my eyeglasses, but not how long it takes, because the commitment is to begin now for a very long time. Stevie, thank you so much for joining us. Please share with us your wisdom through what has been probably the hardest time for you, for all Black people, and I welcome all of your thoughts, and I thank you so much for being so open and generous with your time, and for you then to also engage with all of our participants as we do Q&A for the last 20 minutes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Michaela. Thank you for the invite. Thank you to all of those folks that are part of MOCA. As I look through the audience, and I'm not that swift when it comes to technology, I see folks that I know from former students, Taylor and Bailey. I see you, Leo, and Nick Smiley, Angelina in the corner down there, Alina Rainsford, and if you guys know your names come up, that's how come I can remember. Also see folks from parents from Marin Horizon, parents that are currently there, and former parents. I see you, Sally. I want to acknowledge the folks from Horizon Community Schools steering committee. I think I see you somewhere out there, Trig. I think I saw you earlier. Welcome, and thanks for being here. Let's see, where do I start? I want to start with a couple of things. First, I need to tell you how I'm feeling. And there's two things that come to mind. I'm tired, and I'm feeling pain. And you'll hear that throughout tonight. I'm tired of having to go through this over and over, and the pain is setting in. It's for George Floyd, and Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, and Oscar Grant. All folks who have died at a time when they thought they would be protected. Some quick ground rules for Q&A. As you're in here today, listen to learn. Listen to learn. Gonna hear some things that you may not have known. Gonna hear some things that are probably you've never heard before. I ask you to seek first to understand before wanting to get your story out there. Seek to understand. Work from your own learning style. We all come from different places and are at different places at this time. Take some risks, lean into some discomfort. I am pro-Black. That does not make me anti anything else, but I am pro-Black. Assume positive regard. And if you want to share something, make sure you speak from the I perspective. Those are just basically kind of community norms. So when Michaela first called me, it was interesting. When I was actually headed down to Marin City last Tuesday to a peaceful protest. And before I was going to head out, I checked my emails. I don't always do that, but I checked my emails, and there was an email from Michaela. So I quickly opened it up, and I didn't quite finish reading it, but I saw her phone number. And so I called her, and she gave me a quick rundown on MOCA and this particular conversation. And I said, yeah, I would love to join. Sometimes you're called to do things and you question, why me? I've learned to say, why not me? I want to talk a little bit about systemic racism. And then I want to talk about something that I've been involved in, and other folks within this room here who have been involved in through Marin Horizon School and Horizon Community School to make some systemic changes. And when I think of systemic racism, there are 3 to 4 things that quickly come to mind. In education, in housing, and in jobs, and which goes along right along with economics. And what I am keenly aware of is that Black folks have, for 400 years, been surviving in a system that was not designed for us. It wasn't too long ago that schools were desegregated. In fact, part of my talk tonight will talk about a school that was recently here in California, right in Marin City, who we created Horizon Community School to hope make a change in that school system that was segregated. The way I want to break this down, I want to talk about 3 things: the beginning, the middle, and currently. What started Horizon Community School and started this systemic change for education was at a meeting that was put on by the TAM School District, and I was there with our head of school at the time, Dr. Louise Otley. And we heard a stat, and the stat was staggering. The stat said that currently, and this was 5 years ago, that there was only 1 kid from Marin City that was taking honors classes, which was preparing them for college. And when I heard the stat, and they said 1 kid, the kid was my kid, Sinclair Lee, who also was a former Marin Horizon student. We, at that time, were living in Antioch. We still live in Antioch. But because I work in Mill Valley, my children have an opportunity to go to school in Mill Valley because I make a positive impact in the community. So there was it was easy for my kids to go there. 4 of my girls went to TAM and graduated. I did the same thing myself. And so when I heard this, it was kind of like, wow, our kids are not being prepared. And, knew this for a long time because the school district, the public school district that serves Marin City, had been failing the community for more than 40 years, to my recollection. And then the more I thought about it, it was actually 50 years. And here's why I say that. I vividly remember being in the 4th grade and having 20 kids in the class and 1 kid who learned differently. And I can remember to this day, the day that the teacher took his desk and put it behind her desk. And she put it behind her desk because she could control it. Because he wasn't picking up the information the way we were, he would always make jokes and mess around. So he was basically called the class clown. Every class has one. Nowadays, there are more than one. What I learned was that, I didn't know it at that time, was that he has some learning disabilities. He learned differently. And his being put behind the teacher's desk followed him not only from 4th grade, but all the way through Bayside MLK and through TAM High School, with him basically sitting behind the teacher's desk, not necessarily getting the same information we got. And what I came to realize over the last 50 years is that the school district still had 20 kids in the classroom, but there were 19 sitting behind the teacher's desk. Kids were going into high school. totally unprepared. And for those of you students out there now that went to Tam High School, you might recall some of this. It might be one of those aha moments for you. Why didn't I have Black kids in my class in high school when I had them at Marin Horizon? So Luis and I went to his office and we sat and we were trying to figure out, what can we do? Not just he and I personally, but as a school, what can we do to make a difference? And I'll admit that there were tears flowing from both of us because it was painful, because these were Black kids that were not being served. And education is supposed to be for all of us. And if education is the key to success, why aren't our kids succeeding? And then it hit us. It actually hit us almost at the same time. Marin Horizon School, when it was first founded back in 1977, was founded as a toddler program for 2-year-olds. There was no 2-year-old program in Marin City. In fact, the early childhood program that did exist and still exists was not necessarily serving Marin City families, primarily because you had to fit into this paradigm that was set up where you had to, in order to afford the child care, you had to be, and they called it subsidized child care. In order to get that, you had to basically have no income. You were basically in the welfare system. You were being taken care of by the government. And the moment you got off of that welfare system and got you a job for $11 an hour, you were making too much money to qualify for subsidized child care. And in Marin and anywhere in the country, we're talking about $20,000 a year. I don't know how anybody could live on $20,000 a year, let alone raise a family. So we realized that what we wanted to do was form a public and private partnerships. And so in those first 2 years, we were talking with funders, we were talking with Marin City community leaders. We were invited in by the Marin City Community Services District because at that time they were thinking about creating a new space that they were calling the Community Center for Life, which was going to house youth recreation, senior services, healthcare, and early childhood education. And we were invited in to be part of the early childhood education for a couple of reasons. One, I grew up in Marin City. I used to run a Boys and Girls Club in Marin City. And I ran it probably for about 10 years. And as successful as it was one of those agencies, because it was working, we started losing funding. And that doesn't make any sense, but that's part of systemic racism. We were being successful in helping young people look at education. We were being successful helping young people look at employment and training. We were successful in helping kids with leadership development. We were successful in helping kids play, youth recreation, but we didn't fit within the system. That's actually when I started at Marin Horizon, and that was some 24 years ago. So to get back to the timeline, and being invited in, one of our biggest partners is the Marin Community Foundation, and actually invited one of the program officers to come visit us at Marin Horizon School over in Mill Valley, knowing that if she could see what we do, she would probably like what we were doing and figure that it could help the community of Marin City. And I specifically made sure she went into a primary class that was led by Angie Evans, who is the head teacher and is the catalyst of what's happening at Horizon Community School. And then there was a little meeting of the minds right after that. And I went rogue, had set up with Luis and a couple other people from the school. We had like a system who was going to ask what question. And after sitting down, I just jumped right to the gun, went rogue, and just asked the question, what would it take for Marin Horizon, an independent school in Marin County, to get a grant from the Marin Community Foundation? They only fund nonprofit organizations. Marin Horizon School is a nonprofit organization. And the program manager from Marin Community Foundation just smiled and said, what you would have to do. And of course, everybody else in the room looking at me like, Stevie, what are you doing? We got to give her this other stuff first. And it was, they don't need giving all that other stuff. Let's just get right to it right now. We're going to make a change. Let's just get right to it right now. And what she said was we would have to collaborate with Community Action Marin, who was running the early childhood program, the subsidized program. And we would also have to get a letter of support from Marin County Office of Education. Now, I'm smiling along with her because I know Mary Jane Burke from Marin County Office of Education. We have a relationship. And I also at the time knew Liz Burns, who was in charge of the programs for Community Action Marin. Had a working relationship with both of them. I'm feeling good. Oh, I think we got this. But a couple things happened. Ended up bringing Mary Jane along, and she was a little skeptical at first because for her, running the public school system, how do we let a private school come in and just take over? We just can't let that happen. But we got that. But what she come to understand was that one of our main goals was to help families get prepared for kindergarten. Not only just to help the child, but to help the families get prepared for kindergarten. Because something that we knew was that I knew over those years, those 45 years of sitting behind the teacher's desk, the parents that we would be serving now were behind those teachers' desks. And so they did not have the best opportunity when it came to education. So we knew we would be educating them as well. And so once I told that story to Mary Jane Burke, she too broke down in tears. And we had a letter of support the next day. The next phase was talking with Liz Burns at Community Action Marin. And the first thing I said to Liz is, Liz, the foundation wants us to collaborate, and I am not here to collaborate with you. And probably the same look that some of you are going through right now was, are you out of your mind? You were told that's what you had to do. And I said, I don't want to collaborate, and here's why. Because of the history of agencies coming in Marin City and collaborating with the community, one of the things that happened was that you'd have Group A coming in to help, and then you got Marin City, and we're working on this thing, C, that, to help the community. And at some point in time, the agency coming in will forget about what we came in here to work on, and we'll start thinking about themselves. And so I didn't want to go through that anymore. That was painful. That's some of the pain I'm talking about today. So I said, Liz, we need to partner. And here's what partnership looks like. We need to continue to work for each other for the good of the community, no matter what. And one of the ways that manifested itself was that a couple of years, within the start of our first year, Community Action Marin, who happened to be running a program called the Marin City Learning Center in Marin City, their facility was sold right out from under them. And I went along with Liz to meet with the folks who owned the building at the time, which is the Marin City Community Development Corporation, who sold the building. And Liz doesn't like this story, but I have to share it this way. Liz got very upset within the first 10 minutes of the meeting because they basically insulted her. And Liz got up and left, but I stayed because we were partners. Somebody needed to be there. And I had to educate this group on who Marin Horizon was. We are not just some fly-by-night independent school coming in to take over. That is not who we are. We're coming in to help the community. And we're going to be there to help the community. So that's what partnership looks like. We started our first year working with 2-year-olds, and we brought in 12 families. We went through an interview process. Families had to fit, within the criteria, which included either living in Marin City, having a parent who worked in the community, having at least one parent who grew up coming up through the Marin City Sausalito School District, having a parent who may have come through Marin Horizon School, or having long-term family connections within the community. You had to fit in one of those. And we had many folks who fit 3 or 4 of those criteria. And we started with those first group of babies, our pioneers, and worked with them along with the parents. We have what we call parent engagement, where once a month parents had to come in for a family meeting about whatever was happening at that time. Over the last year and a half, we've been talking about trauma-induced care because we realize that as Black people, we have gone through tons and tons of trauma. We're in the middle of a new traumatic experience, basically 2, the pandemic and then the uprising that's happening all around the country. So we went into year one with funding from Community Action Marin, and we also ended up with some funding through state funding, which helped with families that qualify for subsidies, because not all of our families qualify. And we continue to partner with those two agencies. In fact, I have to say this. Today, I received final confirmation that the Marin Community Foundation has approved us for yet another year of a grant for more than $400,000 to help us continue to do what we do, to help make change in the community. So there are people who understand what we're doing and why we're trying to do it. One of the other things that happened was that in that first year, we wanted to help the school district make some changes. That was our goal. We don't want to not have people go to school within their community, but the school had to change. And so over the last year, they hired a new superintendent who has begin to make those changes. In fact, I was at a Zoom meeting with him earlier today, actually back-to-back meetings, where we were talking about what our partnership is going to look like and forming our partnership to continue this change. We've also created some new partnerships in that we're in a portable building located on the community service district property where we have licensing to serve 30 kids. Because we're in our third year and we're up to 32, we needed to find new space. And so one of the things we were able to create, and by the way, the first place we went was the school district to see if we could possibly build some classrooms on their space. And at the time, they thought it would take 3 to 4 years to get something like that accomplished. And it was kind of like, we need to find some immediate space because, by the way, Community Action Marin has lost their space. And they're going to need, and in order for them to continue in the community, they're going to need some additional space, which is where we were, in the portable. And so we then started shopping around and just happened to run into folks from the St. Andrew Presbyterian Church, who happens to have a little plot of land that has been sitting for the last 25 years. And it was originally, once we started our conversation and we started looking at blueprints, and then looking at the blueprints, we both discovered that that piece of property was set aside for the Boys and Girls Club of Southern Marin, the same boys club that I told you I worked for. But somehow that information never was relayed to those of us that were working at the Boys and Girls Club. So that property has just been sitting there. And so it is just, it feels right that we are in a place where we signed a lease, a 5-year lease agreement with the church. We're at the planning department right now to get approval to put 4 classrooms, with one being for administrative purposes, 4 classrooms onto the space, which allows us to serve more families in Marin City. We now serve 2, 3, and 4-year-olds. There's a classroom for each age group. Something that's unique about us is that we came into the process, and people are wondering what makes it work for us, and that because of my relationships in Marin City, my connections, I somehow seem to be connected to a lot of people in a lot of different ways. Because of that, we have where was I going? When you get old, you kind of lose thought. I'm so happy about those relationships. But we've been able to secure the St. Andrew site. And because of the relationships that I've had, trust was already there for Marin Horizon School. One of the things that happened previously was that whenever I went into Marin City, people would ask me, they would stop me. Mothers, fathers would stop me and say, hey, how do I get my kids into your school? And I always gave them all the same answer. I need you to come into Mill Valley to fill out the application. And many folks wouldn't do that. That's the part that I would not do. I'm not going to get the application for you. I need you to come meet me somewhere. Come and get this, and then I can help you. And there have been some that have done nothing, others who have come in there and have been able to join our community. And some have been put on waiting lists. And so because we had that trust from the very beginning, which is key to working in Marin City, is you have to build trust. Other agencies that have come in are still in the process of building trust within the community. And we were able to start with that. That is one of the things that makes us successful. That is what puts us where we are now, about to move into the St. Andrews site. I'm going to kind of stop talking for a little bit to allow for some questions. But then at the end, I do want to share some websites, things that might be helpful to each of you out there. Shelley?
So Shelley and Taylor, do we have people who've raised their hand that we'd like to unmute right now?
If you would like to ask a question, just click on the participants icon at the bottom of your screen, and you'll have the option to raise your hand, and I'll unmute you.
Stevie, I think you've been so thorough that people are thinking of all the millions of questions they have. And so.
I have one. I have something I want to add.
Okay.
And this might help with questions. So when it comes to making systemic changes, whether you be in education, whether you are in a place where you own your own business and create jobs, whether you are in the real estate market or banking and can create economic opportunity, think about where you are in those systems and what can you do to make some changes.
And to Stevie, to that end, one of the things at the Marin City protest that we heard, which was so helpful because you and many of the speakers said, this is what we want. This is what we need. And it was talking about us as white people voting against our own interests, sometimes in order to get things done. Do you want to address that?
And so sometimes, what is that, my own interest? So I have a real estate business and you know, we're pretty successful. And we want to, I want to make a change by bringing people that are different, bringing Black folks and people of color in to learn this particular profession. But in order to help folks, because we are talking about getting out to vote, in order to help folks to understand that the current situation, political situation, is dividing our country. There's no getting around that. And so, what's the old saying? If we all stand together, we prosper. Divided, we suffer. We're in the process of being divided. If your political party happens to be Republican, you may need to think about the change that I need to make to help folks is to change who's running the ship. Because the ship is sinking. So that's just a little touch of what it could look like in changing and voting against your own interests.
Do we have somebody else ready with their hand raised?
I see that Rachel has a hand up. Rachel, you've been unmuted. Go ahead.
Thanks. Hi, Stevie. It's really good to see you.
Rachel, woo, what's up, Rachel?
Yep, Rachel and Benji.
Right there, how you doing?
Good to see you. Thank you for doing this, by the way. So my question is, I see a lot of people here who are either just graduated from college or about to graduate from college, and I was wondering, what can we do with our careers, or just as people who are kind of emerging into the world right now, to help advocate for people of color in general, but especially Black people?
Hey, I'm gonna start with this, Rachel. Find some Black friends, whether at your church, wherever you frequent, and start some conversations with them about where they are, whether it's economically, educationally, because that whole voting against your own thing. Now, you don't want somebody to take a job that you want, because of course you think you're the most qualified. But as you go into those positions, think about a position that someone could be able to come in from the ground floor and work their way up. We've always come in at the ground floor, but we've never been allowed to work our way up. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Rachel. That is my tip right there. The other thing is that, Rachel, at the end of this, I have a series. I have about 3 or 4 different links to some websites. One happens to be one that looks at a growth mindset for all of us, and which will probably answer your question a lot better than I just did. So I do have some resources to share at the end of this. All right.
Steve,
Hey, the other thing, get out there and vote. That's the first thing you can do. Get out there and vote. Benji, you should be like 18 now, right? And don't get mad at me because you're older, bro.
hey, Stevie, so you've talked about Horizon Community School. We actually have the principal and founder, Angie, on the Zoom. And I think that one of the things that would help, we have many people here who are not from Marin, and some who are in Boston and New York and Chicago and Dallas and Miami on the line on Collective Conscience tonight. And I think it's really an important model that can be replicated. And I think that Angie and you and the team have worked very hard to not only make this replicable, but to follow these students when they graduate from this preschool to go right through into many of our schools in Marin, and you'll stay with them. And I think that's something you might want to address because it's a really critical part of the success of that student.
So Angie, where are you, Angie? I'm looking for you.
She's right here. Easy for me.
Right here. Oh, there you go. My bad. I was going to address a little bit of that question a little bit later on about how you can give, which also addresses Rachel's a little bit too. We have one of the things that we do within Horizon Community School is we started with buddy classes, in that 5th, 6th, and 7th graders come over to Horizon Community School once a month, and vice versa. They come over to us, and we do different activities. From that, we have a list of volunteers, kids who come in after school. From that, we have a group of parents who have begun to donate to the school, donate financially. And those parents have also brought in friends of theirs. Angie, you want to help me out?
Where did she go? And
Yeah, she'd have moved out here. She moved over to our right this time.
Oh, wait, I think I see her. Hold on.
Unmute Angie, please.
I think I got her. Angie, I got you. Did I get you? There you are.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I think if I'm not mistaken, Michaela, what you're asking about is us tracking and keeping track of the kids as they graduate. And this year is our first graduating class. What we did was we actually hired somebody who could support me in partnering, and other partnerships that we are building are with other independent schools. And so we spent a lot of this year visiting all of the independent schools in Marin County and in San Francisco at this point. At a certain point, we started reaching out, and then later we had other schools reaching out to us. And out of that, and I'll mention Michaela's generosity, we have a child going to St. Hilary's, and we have 2 kids at Marin Horizon School and 1 on the waiting list. And many of the other families chose to go to Willow Creek. And that's mainly because of their connections and siblings. We even have a parent who works there. But one of the things that we do Bridget Anderson and I, is that when we go and meet these principals and these admissions directors, we're very, very clear about what our expectations are, our desire to stay in these children's lives, our plans to continue to advocate for these families, and for them to be able, as a part of their partnership, to allow us that entry if we have a parent who is having trouble, having some discomfort, whatever it might be, that they can reach out to us and allow us to reach out to the school, to be able to partner with them around culture. And this is all around culture. And that our plan is to be able to follow these kids. Stevie and I went to visit a school in Tennessee, which was amazing. I still have a question mark, although it was amazing. And I'll tell you, that question mark is that you have this beautiful campus with kids of color, 1st through 5th grade. However, none of their teachers were of color. And for me, that's an issue. It's still an issue, no matter how good a teacher you are, no matter, there is something just innate, I believe, and organic and necessary about having teachers that look like you, having books that look like you, having conversations and you understand what the conversation is about, because you know what the products are in their homes, etc. And so that was still a question mark for me there, which is something Horizon Community School has. But all of these other schools that we're partnering with understand that we want to follow these kids and continue to advocate for the families. And so we are working on making sure that we know how they're doing as they're moving along. And is there any support that we can support them on? And I'm talking, even one of the things that I got out of Tennessee, the story that touched me was a coach. So we met all of the I think it was the first high school graduating class, right, of Black students, right, all going to different colleges. And there was a coach who went with one of the kids, supposed to go with him and his mother, but drove him down to his school. Mom had said all the paperwork was done, et cetera, et cetera. And they got there, mom didn't show up and none of the paperwork was done. So that coach stayed there with him for 2 days to make sure that all of his paperwork was in place, to make sure that he had everything that he needed, to make sure that all the financial aid, everything was in place for him before he left. And sometimes that's the kind of advocates that we have to be and be prepared to be, because it's not always the kid's fault if a parent doesn't show up. And a part of a parent not showing up within our culture is, and Stevie, I wanted you to speak to this a little bit, is exactly why we're having these protests today. The lack of entry, the lack of information, the lack of being seen, the lack of being heard, and the lack of opportunity. And I think, like Stevie said, I'm really just tired. You know, I've been fighting this social justice fight for over 30 years. And after a while, you know, enough is enough. And there's got to be some kind of change. And usually when can't find the word, but when a huge change is about to occur, it's bad before it gets good. Mm-hmm. In order to really be heard, sometimes it looks really horrible. And if you are watching the news and all of that, sometimes you can get lost in the fact that they're talking about the violence and they're talking about this, that, losing the point of why this is happening, right? That a Black man was killed on TV in front of the world. And that it's been happening. it's what we call a modern day lynching. But Stevie, I answered the question, Kayla?
Mm-hmm.
The tracking kids, okay. And partnering with the schools that they're going to understand that that's a part of our vision, so to speak. But Stevie, I also wanted you to speak to the difference, because I've had a lot of questions, a lot of conversations in the last several weeks. And that I think there's two things that a lot of white people don't understand. That is the difference between equality and equity.
Equity. So, okay, that's what I thought you wanted me to go.
Okay.
And so here's what that looks like for Horizon Community School, looking at both of those. So equality says that we all have the right to an education. We all have access to quality early childhood education. That's what we looked at. Equity involves making sure that everyone has what they need in order to succeed. So for example, one of the things we're helping parents with is learning how to be advocates for not only themselves, but also for their young students. A tool that we teach at Marin Horizon to our first graders, actually to our 2 and 3-year-olds. They learn how to advocate for themselves. Equity is also making sure that people, it's not giving more, but it's giving what I need to succeed. If I'm going to be going to school and I don't have lunch or enough money to pay for lunch, the school should make sure that I can be able to get a lunch. That would be equity, because I can now learn with the rest of them because I'm eating on a full stomach. If my family can't afford to have books, then maybe someone could help me buy books or buy books for me so that I'm at an equal place with everyone else. If I don't get those books, then I'm behind. All I have is equal being able to go to the same school. But equity allows me to get the tools that I need in order to succeed. The other thing that Angie touched on for a minute, when it came to what can people do, and this goes to you too, Rachel, you may not be at this place, but someday you will be. What Michaela has done was, when she first heard about the school, she just kind of went with, how can I help? And then it was like, St. Hilary is a place that my father loved. It's a school right in Tiburon. I can help set up a scholarship to pay for a kid from Horizon Community School to go to St. Hilary. At the same time, I know that there are going to be people following him to help make sure, and I'm saying him because we know it's a little boy, to make sure that he is in a place where he can succeed.
Yep. Questions? Want to make sure we're not.
I see Sarita has a question. Sarita has a question.
Oh.
Yeah. I'll unmute her. If we have too many, then I can't get to her.
Okay. So, okay, Taylor started a question. Teresa has a question. Go ahead, Taylor.
As soon as I can get her unmuted, I will.
Okay.
Well, while we're doing that,
go ahead, Taylor. Answer yours, and then Shelley can unmute. Teresa, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Stevie. I think just for myself, just as a question, I wanted to know what are some of the best life advice that you've received?
I've received?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shit. Oh, excuse me. Wow. That Taylor. I think it would have to come from my family. When I say my family, I'm like number 13 or 14 kids. But I come from a family of folks who help people. I have people in my family who work in the healthcare. I have folks in my family that work in education as teachers. But they're all helping people. And so I can remember my sister Jewel telling me when I was like a freshman at Tam High School, and I made the honor roll, and I thought I was hot stuff. And she said, boy, always remember you are not better than other people. At the same time, other people are not better than you. So that might be it, Taylor. I always tell people, and so that advice I give to students: do good, Nick. Do good, because when you do good, you're helping other people. When you do well, you're taking care of yourself. We all should be doing well. Make sure you do good.
We have Teresa.
Unfortunately, I can't unmute Sarita, and I don't see Teresa. Taylor, can you help me find Teresa?
Teresa's last name, Wallace?
It's Sarita, but she.
Sarita, yeah, I can't. Sarita, unfortunately, and what I've done is invited her to just type of.
Here I am.
Oh, I
there
got
it is.
her.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much. I just didn't know when I was going to be invited in. And I just want to start with thank you so much for organizing this call, this conversation, and this incredibly complicated set of issues. So thank you for organizing this. And my question is, as I've been watching sort of schools helping underprivileged, underserved areas across the country, especially in Chicago, which I'm from, I'm wondering how this model is going to help empower the parents of the kids. So the parents of the kids who don't have the time, who can't advocate, who can't always do that, and they're relying on sort of a third party, which is a caring community. How do we bridge that between the parents, the caring community, and the administration? So it's almost like, to me, it looks like a corporate structure. And we're doing it for the first time in Marin, but I'm wondering if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Can somebody help me with that question? Because I couldn't hear it all the way. What was she asking?
So she's asking Steve, about the how is the system and the structure that you put together with Horizon Community School, and address this to perhaps dealing with parents who do not have a lot of time because they both are working, or the it's a single mom, they're working, and often other people are involved in their care. So how do you bridge all of that to keep a fluid engagement among all the parties that are responsible for this child?
Got it. And so what we do is make sure that there is more, that we know that there's more than one party. We know how the families are connected. And so we, at an early stage, we're in communication with the parents from day one. And so it becomes, if you can't make it, who can we call on? And if we can't call on someone in the family, there may be another parent within the school who is willing to be there to help advocate for you. It is not because parents don't want to be there. It's because they're learning to get their voice. They're finding their voice and learning how to use it. And so that's why we in our parent ed, it is around advocacy. It's around dealing with trauma so that you can get to being an advocate. And it's about, there's the old African proverb, it takes a village. But what's always missing from that piece is recognizing who's all in that village. Because the village wants to help. Marin City is a village. Everywhere, Chicago is a village.
Can I add something, Stevie?
Go ahead.
First of all, Stevie started out talking about trust. And that is the first thing that I had to do, we had to do as teachers, was to make sure that the parents trust us. And sometimes it takes a little longer for some than others, but that is the first piece. I also grew up in Marin City. And so that came a lot quicker and a lot faster than even I thought it would. And then it's also to set up expectations. So I'm not sure who asked the question, but it depends on what you're talking about. with regards to advocacy. Like Stevie said, it does take a village, and that is one way that we do it. There's also another piece to where we want parents to understand they are parents and that they need to show up for their kids. And so that is all, that expectation is put into place. So if I know that it's a parent that could have showed up for their kid, then I address it.
Mm-hmm.
I address it very clearly. Even if it's the words, you have to show up for your child. But I address whatever needs to be addressed. And I think that's also a little bit of the difference for the parents. Talking to somebody who looks like them, somebody who understands their community and their family and who they are, and knowing that there's no judgment. If you don't speak, if you don't tell me how I can support you, I can't support you. So whatever the issue is, and we usually get there. And I think that's one of the things that I'm most proud of since the school opened, is that we get there. No, Stevie, I'm not going to tell the story because this is your thing.
It didn't take but 2 weeks. So we were talking about trust. And so I had a trust with the community that came because of who I was and where I worked. And so people in the community knew me. Marin Horizon knew me. So that trust was there for me. And for Angie, people knew who Angie was. They had kind of forgotten her a little bit because she didn't do the same work I did in the community. And so it didn't take her but 2 weeks to get that trust from our families. I don't even know if it was 2 weeks.
Yeah, no.
I don't even know if it was 2 weeks in. And that we had a parent who was unsure. And we helped that parent get through it.
And it turned out that her kid was autistic.
Mm-hmm.
And she was frightened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I love that because, thank you. So the trust issue is a big one because I see the role that you two are playing, collectively representing the village. And then when you look at these kids, I'm going to try to say this properly because I see the great responsibility that you have in creating this transition. And as we watch, sort of our funding, the funding is really the biggest thing that affects everything. And so we've got parents who want to be engaged, but can't be engaged. I work with a lot of very, very uber wealthy families who want to be engaged, but are not engaged. And there are middle people in the middle, and the people who get lost is, where's the agenda? And so I guess to dumb this down, when you gain the trust of the kids, they're going to do whatever the people who are taking care of them say. So how do we support them in an ever-changing environment of education?
And I think for us, we've gotten parents to understand that this is the beginning of that educational journey. We are an early childhood education program. So one of the first things that happened was parents started using the term school for their 2-year-olds. My 2-year-old is going to school. That's actually a huge paradigm shift when it came to Marin City and when it came to our parents. And getting them to understand that it's school. And we always remind them if education is the key, let's start school early so that we can get moving on that success train early. You will probably always have parents that you have to pull along with you. We haven't had to pull too many people because there are other parents who recognize that and they start pushing from behind. There's that village again.
I actually have another question, and this is from myself and Angelina. We kind of wanted to know, Stevie and Angie as well, if you wanted to answer this too. How do we help educate people who don't believe in systemic racism, who aren't engaging, who aren't being involved? Yeah.
So one of the resources that I'm going to share with you a little bit later, Taylor, is actually, and it comes from a woman by the name of Rosetta Lee. Yes, we call each other brother and sister, who's done some work from Marin Horizon School. She's done work with our staff. She's done work with our parents. She's done work with our board. And a lot of her work is around identity development. But she has this paradigm shift, which we call, and now the name escapes me, unfortunately. But the information that she has allowed me to share with you all will show you different places where you yourself will be able to help, where you yourselves will be able to educate. Because it's not necessarily for folks of color to educate you. We've been going through this for a long time. Remember when I said at the beginning, I'm tired? That's part of being tired. It's a growth mindset. That's what it is. It's a growth mindset, you know? And it looks at different places within the system, and you will know where you fit. And this is how you should be. This is a way for you to look at things a little differently. The growth mindset kind of works like, I'm having trouble reading this. And the growth mindset says, I need to open the book and find somebody who may be able to help me. Okay? Just always looking at the other piece of it. What can I do to be successful? We sometimes always look at a problem as, I can't do this, as opposed to, maybe I can do if I do this. I have to look at something different. Does that help you? Okay.
And I'll add to it. A lot of research is showing that, well, first I'll tell you this, the hot thing on Twitter or Tweeter, whatever, I don't do it. So y'all know you know what I'm talking about, is the book White Fragility. So that's a book that you might, and that's all about your own whiteness and who you are in it. And I think in order to have these courageous conversations, you have to know who you are as a white person. The same, but a little bit different than what Stevie is saying in terms of knowing where you are and understanding where you are and all of that. But it's also really about knowing who you are. And let me see, how can I say this? The last thing that Black people want to hear from white people is that I'm sorry. That we know that you didn't do it, right? I mean, we don't want to hear, I'm sorry, or what's some other things. Really what we want to know is how you can advocate for us. And the best way for you to advocate for anyone is to speak up and speak out. Because silence is, at this point, it's as bad as the act itself in some cases. So it's really about speaking up and speaking out. But before you can do that, you have to really understand in your own mind and your own heart, so that you can recognize when you meet somebody or you're talking to somebody, oh, I can have a courageous conversation with them, or, oh, this is not a person who's going to change their mind, so let me put my energy someplace else. Because there are a lot of people that it's not worth your time to have a conversation with. You cannot change a white supremacist mind, right? That's who they are. But there may be somebody over here that's borderline, right? And you'll be able to know that based on what you know about yourself. Does that make sense?
Okay. Excellent. Other questions, Shelley and Taylor? Do we have other people raising their hand?
I don't. I did see Sarita has raised her hand again, but I had seen another hand up, but it's been lowered.
Oh, wait a second. We have one here, Shelley Ann Flanagan from New York.
All right. Let me find her.
I just unmuted her because I happened to see
You
her.
got her. You got her.
Myself. Thank you so much. I'm sitting here. My name is Anne. And I'm in New York City, and I want to thank you, Stevie, Angie, Michaela, for this courageous conversation. And I loved what you said, Stevie. So in this last 7 days, I've been right in the middle of looting, protesting, conversations, non-conversations, and I just loved what you said. So I grew up in Ireland, so I don't have a problem opening my mouth, and I didn't get raised in this country, and so in a way I don't have a lot of the, I wouldn't say baggage, but this is a very tense, very, very complex, like ball of multiple layers of concern and years in the making. And what really was incredible for me was I just started reaching out, like you said, talking to people in the street, talking to my African American friends, talking to my African friends, talking to my white friends. And what's, you know, I thought to myself, what can I palpably do? Because my heart is just aching, in a way that we can have a conversation that respects everybody, that doesn't diminish any group, but that moves the needle forward. So I don't know if, you know, I reached out, I wrote to the head of diversity and inclusivity at my company. I'm in real estate as well. And she's nationwide. And I just share this with you all in a circle of trust. And I just said, I don't know, I'm called to reach out to you. I don't know where this will go. I don't know if anything will come from this, but I put myself at your service to in some way brainstorm and come up with something tangible, palpable in the field of real estate that will just help everybody come together at this moment. Because we just went through in New York, you know, as everywhere else, the pandemic, and there was an opening of hearts. Now we're going through this, and I think there's this incredible opportunity for change, but it has to be sustainable. So she immediately responded and she said, when are you ready? We're going to have a conversation tomorrow. And this is nothing to do with business. I happened to reach out to her because I thought something could come from that, but everything that comes from this will just be from my heart, because I couldn't sit still and not somehow participate in my, you know, Irish, can't keep my mouth shut way. So I just thank you, all of you and everyone here, but this is such an important conversation, and I just feel so content tonight to have been able to hear you, you and Angie particularly. So thank you very much.
Stevie's muted.
Oh,
There we go.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you for that, Ann. Something that quickly came to mind is an internship program. You can find a local school where there are parents wanting something. Or you can come to Horizon Community School and do the same thing in New York, but you are in New York. but it starts with your office and it expands across the country. You can put us in touch with somebody local in the Bay Area. So thanks for being here, and thanks for sharing that. You're on your way to making changes.
okay. Anybody else? We have Shelley. No?
Sarita had one more question, but I cannot again.
Okay.
There's some complication with unmuting her.
I don't know what's going on with my unmute. Can you hear me?
It's on. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to waste time and just say thank you again. And I think that there are so many layers to this, and I am really excited that you have such a robust team, viewers, people sharing what they're doing. You know, this is the database that is, you can't put a price point on it. It's what's going to really help you move the needle. I know it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I come in with a cynical view because I come from big towns where I've seen this happen, and I've lived here for 30 years, and I care deeply about the systemic change that we can make in a NIMBY county. where not everybody counts themselves as a NIMBY. And I think we have such a huge opportunity here in Marin. Huge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yay.
So thank you. Anybody else, Shelley, before I close?
I do not see any other hands.
Okay.
Oh, I got what? Hold on. We have one latecomer. Audrey, you are unmuted.
All right.
Audrey.
Audrey, wonderful.
She's still muted.
She's unmuted. Go ahead, Audrey.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Okay, great. All right. Hi, guys. I recognize a lot of you guys. A lot of Marin Horizon alumni. I'm Audrey. I graduated back in 2010, which feels forever ago. At Marin Horizon. I just wanted to throw in, because with all that's going on, obviously, it's a lot. And as Angie and Stevie both mentioned, I've only been alive for 23 years and been Black for 23 years. I am also very tired. I can't tell you how many times I have had this conversation. I have had the same issues that we're going through, but this time it's great that there are people surrounding me, but I'm saying that in the previous times I have been alone. I think I just wanted to echo of like this tiredness that people are feeling. It's because it's been happening so many times. And it's great that it's happening now and everyone's feeling very like reaching out and getting people texting me that some I do know, which is great. But part of me is also feeling like I don't want this this momentum to be lost. And that's one thing I just want to like tell everyone, that this has to keep going. I know Marin and the Bay Area kind of in general has this kind of like vibe that, oh, we're so liberal, like we're really progressive here, but that's just not always the case. I have had plenty of experiences and moments where people are looking at me sideways or looking like, why is she here? Like, I just wanted to echo that. Please educate yourselves. Angie mentioned a great book that I like have been recommending to many people. And like, especially for coming from Marin Horizon, like I also with in mentioning the Horizon School, to me it's really important, like, because it starts at such an early age. There was things I was experiencing at Marin Horizon, we don't have to get into it, but like even then, like little things I just feel like I experienced that, like, oh, I'm different. I'm definitely different. And I'm so lucky that I got Shayna like with me at that time with my class to be like, please help me. I got this situation going on. Mm-hmm. But I just want to, before we closed out, to please keep this going. Please mention it to your families. Please talk about it with your kids, grandkids, anybody, because it just has to keep going. It can't just be this one type of thing, because I don't want to do this conversation again. I can't do it again. Something has to be different. I don't want to have to go into a store and worry about how I look or how my hair looks that day, because people are going to look at me thinking I'm up to no good. So be there for people. If you see something, please say something. But that's all I wanted to say, just to reiterate everything. Please educate yourselves and educate your family and the ones surrounding you.
Thank you, Audrey, so much. So we are at the end, but I'd like to end the way we began. We have this in common as a group, and all the other things that make us different are for this purpose, pushed aside so that we may continue this conversation constantly. Mocha Plus, I'd like to tell you, had 100 million followers, and Collective Conscience was a platform to do that. The truth of the matter is, this conversation is critical. We will continue it, but it in and of itself is a grain of sand on the beach compared to the voices that we need to continue to hear and perpetuate in these conversations in order to learn how to do this better, in order to educate ourselves, in order to foster the conversations each of us, and as Stevie asked us, to look at our talents, our treasures, our time, our companies, our industries, and think of new ideas. Think of ways in which we can support, we can come up with innovation that is then furthering the entire movement in a way that will make a lasting difference. I want to thank you again, Stevie and Angie. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your patience with us. It means the world to me personally, and I know to Shelley and myself and Taylor that you agreed to do this. It really is wonderful. And so everybody, please stay tuned. If you do not have Stevie and Angie's contact information, Stevie and Angie, with your permission, I would like to have us provide that, because as you have ideas, you don't need to funnel them all through Mocha Plus. Please go directly to Stevie and Angie about this, about all the ideas you have, because we may have to try hundreds of new ideas to get to the best ones, but we must continue to try. So thank you everyone for spending this hour with us. We appreciate it. And you'll see contact information when we send you the follow-up with all the resources Stevie talked about for our reading and understanding and video. Thank you everyone very much. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. Thank you all.
Thank you.